Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, just wanted to do a quick guide for anyone doing the Final Fantasy XIV x Final Fantasy XV collab, specifically the Garuda encounter, which is the final instance in the Final Fantasy XV collaboration. Now, some people have been having issues with this, and because it's a level 50 quest, there are a lot of players who are new to Final Fantasy XIV that may or may not have been exposed to some of the AoE markers that are present in this fight. So I figured just a quick little overview of things that you can do to prevent Noctis from dying, make sure that you don't die, and overall just complete the fight, especially for anyone newer to the game. Now for the Final Fantasy XV Garuda encounter, you are going to be capped at level 50. The good news is, if you have Blue Mage at level 50, you can actually use it for this, and while it's far from necessary, you really don't need any specific job or strategy in order to do this fight. It is nice to have access to Diamondback and Whitewind, which can just completely mitigate pretty much any need to do anything in this encounter, other than just survive. Your main gimmick for this encounter is going to be the Warp Strike duty action. Now, if you're newer to the game and you haven't gotten the Stormblood yet, the duty action is basically an extra action that is only for that specific encounter. You can bind it to a key if you'd like. I actually just choose to click it personally, but that's up to you. Warp Strike specifically will warp you to your target, whether you're targeting the two monoliths in the arena or Garuda himself, and it will do damage based on distance. The further you are away from the target, the more damage it will deal. So often you'll find yourself warp striking to a monolith to get away from an AoE, and then warp striking back to Garuda at the same time as Noctis in order to deal a bunch of damage. Now, Garuda's mechanics himself are very simple. However, keep in mind that if Noctis dies at any point, or of course if you die, you are going to fail the encounter. So I'll give you a few pointers on what to do when each mechanic comes out. Now, when Garuda jumps away and lands on a specific part of the arena and begins charging an AoE, your goal is to simply warp strike across the arena to the monolith and then warp strike back to Garuda. I like to take a few extra steps back for some bonus damage, but it's not really all that important. Your goal is to avoid it and then warp strike back for more damage. This is the majority of what Garuda will do for this fight, occasionally later in the fight throwing in a few bonus things. There are a few attacks that Garuda does that will damage Noctis, and if you don't do them, there's a very high probability of him dying, especially if you don't have access to any heals in order to heal him back up. The first one you'll probably see is this giant conal AoE that Garuda does. Because Garuda's always going to be looking at you, just keep him faced away from Noctis at all times. It doesn't matter if the AoE hits the monolith, it is completely invincible, so just face him towards the outside of the arena. The second thing you'll probably see is a split damage line AoE on Noctis. Now, split damage AoEs didn't start appearing until level 60, and while you have probably seen them in the previous encounters for this specific event, keep in mind that it is a line split damage AoE. You cannot let Noctis take that AoE on his own. So stand with him and let it knock you back. You could technically prevent the knockback, I think, with Arm's Length, but it's a good opportunity to use your Warp Strike in order to deal bonus damage. The final one you may see is Gravitational Fields. These leave an AoE dot on the ground, which if you stand in it, or if Noctis stands in it, will do damage over time and inflict heavy. All you have to do is make sure that none of these go near Noctis and that you don't accidentally lure him into them at any point by moving Garuda. So just keep them away from Noctis, and honestly, if none of those three things hit him, he shouldn't come anywhere close to dying. The only other thing that might kill you in this encounter is the microburst that happens at about 44%. When Garuda ticks over to this percentage, he'll go to the center of the room and begin constantly pulling you and Noctis towards the center. Your goal here is to try and create distance from Garuda, however the constant pull-in kind of makes that impossible, and you can't use things like Arm's Length in order to prevent it. Your goal is to just sit in the middle of the room, and then right before Microburst is done casting, you're going to want to Warp Strike to one of those monoliths in order to create enough distance to reduce the damage. If you're a tank or if you have a high item level, there's a chance that you will survive this with like 5 to 10% HP, but as long as you wait till right before Microburst is done casting, and then Warp Strike away, you should create enough distance to only take a few hundred damage. If you screw it up and die, don't worry, just try it again and try to get the timing a little bit better. The second half of the fight isn't too much different than the first half, though there is one additional mechanic that can deal damage to Noctis here if you don't do it properly, so if he's low on health, it does put you at risk. It's going to be one of the first things you see after you actually survive the microburst, and it's two red markers above both you and Noctis. This type of marker means that you need to stand near another player with the same marker, or you'll suffer whatever the negative effect is. In this case, it's probably just a ton of damage. I've actually not failed it on purpose to find out, because I know what it does. So when you get this marker and Noctis has it, go and stand by him, make sure the markers are overlapping, and you should be just fine. Everything else is just little things added on. For example, after the microcell, which is the line AoE split damage that also knocks back, there's going to be a donut AoE, but it's silly because there's almost no chance you actually get hit by this AoE. Other than that, when Garuda jumps into the air, he'll try to pull you in once, but it doesn't even make a difference because it's right at the beginning of the cast, so you just make sure you Warp Strike away, Warp Strike back. Second half of the fight shouldn't be any more difficult than the first half, as long as you're still keeping all those AoEs faced away from Noctis and keeping those gravitational puddles away from him. You should be absolutely fine. Oh, one last little thing. When Garuda gets to under 10%, he is going to lock you away and make you do what's called an active time event. Again, if you're newer, you're not used to this, but in this case, all it is just spam buttons. So don't go away from your screen when you notice all your buttons disappear, because you're just going to have to spam press everything on your controller, your keyboard, spacebar, click the button in the middle, whatever it is you want to do. Once you do that, Noctis is going to do a really cool animation. I highly recommend turning on your battle effects before the start of this encounter, otherwise it's going to look pretty weird when he starts doing all those different attacks towards the end. With that, you'll land the killing blow, and you'll be done. Now keep in mind, once you hand this quest in, you will no longer be able to do this encounter, so if you want to do it again for any particular reason, whether it's for screenshots or just because you thought it was cool, you can actually just abandon the quest before handing it in, and then do the quest where you actually unlock this. Again, it's a little bit tedious, but it is the only way to redo this without just outright going and doing another character. I'm actually using one of my alternate characters for the footage here, which is why I'm an Al Ra. And once you're done that, congratulations, you finished the event. You should have all of Noctis's outfit, but if you want the hairstyle, the car mount, and the triple triad card, you are going to need to go to the gold saucer and earn about 230,000 MGP before the end of the event. On top of that, you can earn 6 different Orchestrion rolls by handing in the unidentified Magitech bits that you got from the Fate at the beginning of the collaboration event. I'm going to be doing a video about earning Manderville Gold Saucer points, mostly with the goal of getting it to 200,000, but this should help newer players in terms of earning it, because you can honestly earn that 200,000 with barely any effort once a week for about an hour. Anyway, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and keep an eye out for that MGP video. Thank you for watching, and I will see all of you in the next one, and until then, take care.